a neat little camera, man.
Yeah, I like my little camera.
So we're officially live now. Pretty cool.
Oh, we're doing this live?
Pretty.
Yes. Well,
pretty,
I mean, live.
Oh, okay.
It's
Gotcha.
recorded.
It's
but,
Memorex.
yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's,
I was gonna say, oh wow.
wow, we're
So
old enough to remember
don't-
that name. Nice.
Don't curse.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, we try not to now, unless we're talking about Rob Liefeld.
Then it's
So,
lots of cursing.
although we stopped that.
I'm going to apologize ahead of time because I have a sailor's mouth sometimes.
That's
so,
okay.
yeah.
That's okay. You be you. All right, guys. So if you've been watching for the last few seconds or listening for the last few seconds, you can hear that it's not just Garin and I here. We are joined by a very special guest, and unlike most other interviews that we've done, we're joined by someone we know fairly well. This is a friend of ours. Super excited to get this interview. Super excited to sit and talk. I'm David, and this
I'm Garin.
is, and we are joined by Richard Davis, and he is the owner of our local comic shop that we normally film and record in, Nirvana Comics.
Yep.
But he also has done something pretty cool, man.
You guys filming that dump?
Yeah. We do.
It's crazy.
We really appreciate the opportunity to film in that dump.
It's crazy, and we have comic books behind us. I can't
know,
imagine
right?
why you want to do that. It's weird. So.
It's almost like we're trying to set a professional setting.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no.
No, we
can
just
do green
remodeled
screen.
in here, and it looks fantastic.
It does look awesome.
really
Paint.
does.
And your lights are set to kill, not stun.
Yeah. Oh, especially those in the back corner. I got tired of people getting lost back there.
They're
man.
like,
it's like,
I can't see it. Oh no, I can see.
well, you can see now.
Yes. Yeah.
If I needed skincare work done and I needed a place to have it done, the back corner here.
Heather asked me how I got a sunburn the other day. I'm like, I just stood
Just
in
stood in the back
back.
corner of
the back for
Nirvana.
like 30 seconds.
But yeah, no, I'm real proud of the work they did on the remodel here. It was important when COVID hit and a lot of shops were shutting down, and we have a lot of staff here, great staff, Garin included in that, and
I got included, yay!
and Amber and I we had a conversation, like what are we going to do, with COVID, because we're scared. I mean, because the whole industry's flipping, our livelihood is bottoming out all of a sudden,
Right.
and we both very clearly decided that our staff has never once let us down. Ever. Our staff always comes through for us, and there was no way in hell that we were going to let them down and fail to come through for them. So we're very proud to say that we decided to do a remodel of the store so that we could keep every single one of our staff members fully employed. Not a single staff member here at Nirvana lost a single hour of work during COVID. Some people actually even picked up hours because we had a lot of extra stuff to do.
Oh,
but
we had a lot to list online as
Yeah.
well. I mean, that was the thing that really kept us going, was our online sales. So
Absolutely.
and this was a lot of people sitting at home. Hey, let's read comic books.
Yeah.
Yay! Let's sell you some comic books.
But
Even
it
though you're sitting
was a very unprofitable decision to keep everybody employed.
Yeah.
My business school professors are laughing at me if I would have told them that.
They're like,
we're
don't do
doing
it.
this.
Don't do it, dude. Fire them all. Shut the
One of the
doors.
first things you learn is like, you lay people off when times get tough. But Amber and I, we just couldn't do that because, guys like Garin and Brad and Grant, they work hard for us and we expect a lot out of them. And so when it was our turn to step up, we couldn't let them down, and they rightfully expected a lot out of us. So we're very proud that we kept everybody employed, and man, you can look around the store. It's incredible what they did. So they rewarded our trust in them, and we're eternally grateful. So thank you.
We appreciate it. So you did a cool thing, and something you've been thinking about for a long time.
Yeah.
Something that started off as a screenplay. Am I right?
Well, it actually started out as a stage play.
Stage play.
Yeah, an award-winning stage play.
Okay, so let's talk about this new comic book you've written.
Yeah.
Is that a thing still?
It is. It's it's officially a thing.
Yeah.
I've seen it on horrornews.net and Bleeding Cool and Screen Rant. So if it's not real, then I'm dreaming and I don't want to wake up.
Yeah, no.
Because I'm liking this so far.
So tell us, and if you want to, you can talk a little bit about yourself, because you never ever do that. So you can talk about yourself if you want to, but you can definitely talk about the book, because we want to hear about the book and kind of who's being presented by and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
So take it away. You.
Well, the book's called Cult of Dracula, and it is. We've recently reached an agreement with Second Sight Publishing to get it onto comic book store shelves. It's available for pre-order right now on cornerbox.com. Cornerbox is a fairly new distributor, kind of giving Diamond a little bit of a run for their money, which is kind of cool because the comic book industry has needed some competition for a while, and now we're about to get a whole lot of competition. So Cornerbox is backed by Ingram, but Ingram's been around for
Years.
God forever.
Yeah.
So it's got good backing behind it. They've got a lot of major retail stores signed up for it. There's an agreement that these books are also going to be not only featured in local comic book shops, but they're also going to be in Walmarts and Barnes and Nobles and things like that. So yeah, Cornerbox is really doing a really good thing for the marketing.
That's casting a wide net.
It really is. Yeah, it's
Walmart. That's a really wide net.
Yeah, I mean, and when we came down to it, it's been a really long, strange trip to get Cult of Dracula produced, but coming down to the end, we went from having about 4 publishers who were interested to COVID hitting to having no publishers interested,
Right.
or interested but saying we'll be able to do this in 2022 or 2023, maybe. All their publishing schedules got cut, especially in the independent small press world, everything got cut back. And so they're saying, we still love it, we still want the project, but we don't know when we're going to be able to get it onto the slate. So we went from having several publishers to having 0 publishers, and then all of a sudden we were looking at going the self-publishing route, maybe going through Kickstarter, which is very popular among indie creators. And we were setting it up, we were ready to roll, and then Second Sight got involved. And they absolutely loved the script, loved the first issue that we'd sent them. And so they came very aggressively, made a very, very good offer, very strong offer, which we countered, and
As you do.
of course, never take the first offer. So we countered that first offer and got into advanced negotiations about it, and got our lawyers involved. And then while we were having those negotiations, a previous publisher with interest came back into the picture, and they're slightly larger than Second Sight, but they were making a very aggressive offer. And so it really came down to, in the end, we had to choose between Second Sight and this other kind of publisher coming back into the picture, and it was a difficult choice, but we ultimately decided to go with Second Sight because they were very passionate about the book. Their head of submissions and their editor-in-chief, he was on the phone with me every day. I kind of felt like I now know what it feels like to be an NCAA football recruit, because I was getting calls from people that really shouldn't even know who I am, and my phone's blowing up like all the time. And so Marcus was in contact with me a lot. Then Bradley Golden, who is the publisher and founder of the company. You might recognize him, Bradley Golden. He's written a lot of horror comics. He just signed a deal with Spirit Rider Productions to have 3 of his books turned into films, which is really cool. But then when he finally got on the phone with me, and I was on the phone with him, and he said, "Wait, let me just conference the whole team in here." And so he, it was me and Bradley and Marcus and Spike Jarrell and Peter Brow, and we're having this whole conversation, and every single one of them, to a man, they got the book, they understood what I wanted to do with it, and they were extremely passionate about what we were doing with Cult of Dracula. And so ultimately we decided that it was a better choice to go with a smaller company and be their number one priority than to go with a slightly larger company and just be a paragraph in previews. So we're very happy that we chose to go with Second Sight. They're not a name that you may recognize immediately right now because they're pretty much brand new, but I strongly believe that you're going to know the name in a few years, and I'm really happy to be a part of making that happen.
Help getting the doors open. So tell us a little bit about the book. Tell us a little bit about the inspiration, kind of the setting and the influence of it, that kind of thing.
So Cult of Dracula started, I was having lunch, because as Garin mentioned, it started as a stage play. I was having lunch with a dear friend of mine named Rob Mann. So anybody listening from Wilmington, you're immediately going to you're going to cheer for Rob because Rob's an amazing theater guy. And he's a genius. I mean, he was literally one question away from being on Jeopardy, which is a great story in its own right. But so Rob and I were having a discussion. He was directing a version of Bram Stoker's Dracula for the stage at Thalian Hall in Wilmington. And we were just having lunch talking, and he was like, my cast is amazing. My crew is incredible. We've got this gorgeous set, but the script just sucks. And he's like, there's just no such thing as a good Dracula play. It just doesn't translate anymore. And he said, I've read dozens of scripts before we chose this one, and this was the best of the worst.
It's the best of the junk.
Yeah, and he said, but we've done everything we can do. He said it's nothing against anybody in the play because he loved everybody that was in the cast, and all their performances were excellent, and it really was a beautiful play. But he was right because a lot of the themes didn't translate anymore. So Rob and I were just joking around. I said, you know what? I'm going to write a good one. And we laughed, and Rob knows me well enough. He was one of the very first people I met when I moved to Wilmington, and a dear, dear friend. And so Rob knows that when I set my mind to doing something, even if it sounds crazy, I'm going to do it because I don't quit. I live the line from Firefly: you run until you can't, and then you walk. And you walk until you can't, and if you can't walk, you crawl, and if you can't crawl, you find somebody to carry you. There's no quit. You just keep going. And so I went out, and it took me about a year to write a script that I was comfortable with. And Rob was right. It's very difficult to write a good Dracula play because the original themes don't really translate. We're not afraid of eccentric aristocrats from foreign lands anymore.
Right.
And Dracula has been spoofed and spoofed and spoofed and made fun of so many times.
Sparkling vampires.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not scary.
Yeah.
Sorry, East Tennessee and allergies, man. So when I was the play was originally written pretty much very similar to the original Dracula story, except for we reimagined it within a Charles Manson style cult, which that made things very interesting. But we still had Dracula was still essentially Dracula. He was kind of this hippie biker type guy, but still kind of the eccentric weirdo from another country. And it worked. It was very successful in 2013. It won Best Original Production and a couple of other awards in the Wilmington Theater Awards, which, Wilmington is a beautiful theater community, very vibrant, very active. And then I was very fortunate that a now good friend of mine, Mr. Tony Todd, saw the play. And
Tony Todd, is he some sort of actor?
yeah, Tony. You Star Trek fans out there would know.
He's one of my favorite characters in all of Star Trek. He's Kern, his Worf's brother. Oh man, jeez, I love that man.
Candyman.
Yeah, Candyman. That's the one everybody always asks about.
Star Trek, better.
Yeah,
better,
but Tony Todd.
Smallville.
Smallville,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, Smallville. I'll give you that. Okay.
Well, and he was Reverse Flash, the voice of.
Yeah. Okay, fine. So you know things, fine. You made your point. Let him talk.
So Tony saw the play and was very supportive of me developing it. And one of the very first things he said to me was, he said, "Rich," he calls me Rich, "you've got to develop this into a screenplay." And I was like, okay. I never thought about writing a screenplay, and I'll see what I can do. And I said, if I do it, can we talk about you being involved in it? And he said, we can discuss it. And so
Tony Todd as Dracula.
Well, no, we didn't want him to play Dracula, and he didn't want to play Dracula actually, which is weird because you'd think
Immediately that voice.
Oh, I know. But I wrote an original character named Special Agent Malcolm Brom, and based off of Mal Reynolds from Firefly, and a nod to Bram Stoker, the author of Dracula, and he added an element to the script of being a framing device, and so it turned that one little change there turned the play into kind of like the screenplay into kind of like a true crime read, because here we have Malcolm Brom coming in, and he's investigating the cult of Dracula mass suicides, and that's where the play begins, or the screenplay begins. And so he comes through and finds what's happened, and then we flash back 3 days earlier, and we see the story of how we got to the mass suicides, or what's being called the mass suicides. We find out there's a lot more to it than we initially expect. So we were developing into the screenplay, short story long. Things happened. A screenplay became a little bit too much for me to handle, producing my own film. That was, I'm smart enough to know when I'm biting off more than I can chew, thankfully. So we kind of put that on the shelf for a while, and I met, of course, Georges Genti, who is one of my cover artists and a brilliantly talented guy, and he really liked the script a lot. And so he encouraged me. He's like, you need to turn it into a comic book. And so I said, okay, let's turn it into a comic book. Again, no quit. And so we started developing it into a comic book, and it worked. And I reworked it, sent Georges my outlines for the first 5 scripts, and an entire version of the first issue. And he was like, this is great, it's awesome, but you can do better. And he said, this is a very good paint-by-numbers vampire story. And he said, you could, with the right artist, you could get it drawn, you can get it published, it'll be fine. But it doesn't do anything to push the vampire genre forward. There's nothing here that we haven't seen before. Nothing new. And he said, if you think it's good enough, let's get it going, let's draw it, and we'll do it. And as soon as he said, if you think it's good enough, there was a fire inside of me that said, nope, it's not good enough. And so we started talking about things like 30 Days of Night and how it changed the vampire genre, because for decades upon decades, vampires always had to go to sleep during the day.
Right.
And then all of a sudden in 30 Days of Night, they don't.
Right.
And what did that do for the story? And it is an epically good vampire story because of that, because it changed that one little element. So I went back and started researching a lot of different mythologies from around the world and throughout human history, and because I really wanted to find something new about vampires. What hasn't been done? How can we look at this from a unique angle? How can we 30 Days of Night it, essentially?
Sure.
And I started reading mythologies from going back to the Jewish Kabbalah and Zoroastrianism and Babylonian mythology, Norse mythology, Native American mythology. All these mythologies, and I started to notice all of these cultures have a very common story that appears in almost every single one of them. And it's about a woman who is cursed or cast out to live as an outcast. And to survive, she has to consume the blood of children to survive. And that even actually ties into Bram Stoker's original Dracula, because that's how Lucy is presented. When she's turned into a vampire, she's the lady who haunts the park and steals infants and lives off of their blood. And so I started thinking about, how do we tie this in? And so I really started reading the apocryphal books of the Bible and some of the Kabbalah and the stories surrounding it. And I found kind of an expanded version of the story of Lilith. Everybody knows Lilith as the character who...
From the Bible.
Yeah, she's the Bible. She was Adam's first wife, and she refused to lie down, and she wanted to be his equal, and so God tossed her out of Eden, and she was cursed.
She's always been like the first vampire. That's always been the story for so long, and I think it's a great,
or mother of demons.
Mother of demons, yeah.
That's been a very popular thing throughout literature.
Right.
And so I started reading the expanded story about her, and so in this story, Lilith goes and lives in a cave, and she's happy. She's living her life. She's having babies somehow. Doesn't really explain that, but she's living a life, and God wants to forgive her. He wants her to come back. So he sends some angels to find her in the cave. He says, I want you to go get Lilith, and I want you to offer her the chance to come back. And if she comes back, all is forgiven, everything's fine. But it's a choice. He gives her a choice. And so the angels go to Lilith, and Lilith says, no, I'm good. I like my life. I'm happy. And it's going to end there. Well, the angels get angry because she's refusing God's offer, and so they get inflamed and they curse her. And they curse her that as long as she lives outside of Eden and doesn't accept God's mercy, that she will be cursed for eternity. And to survive, she has to devour 1,000 of her own children every single day to live. And so something clicked. And I was like, what if we connect that to Medusa and Barbaroga and Lamashtu and Lamia and La Llorona,
Right.
and all of these different women, these cursed women throughout all of these mythologies, and what if we make Lilith, instead of the mother of demons, the mother of all vampires? So Dracula then...
So instead of Vlad Dracul being the father of vampires, we now have the mother of vampires.
Right.
Fantastic.
And so Dracula became a title more than a name. It's like, king or emperor.
Right.
And it's passed down through a matrilineal lineage throughout all of history, prehistory, going all the way back to Lilith. So all of these cursed women in all of these mythologies in our world of Cult of Dracula are real, and they're all Dracula. And so when we finally get to modern day and our story of Cult of Dracula, the current Dracula it's come time for her to pass her title on to one of her lineage, and something happened, and that heir was stolen from her and hidden away in the world, and now she's managed to bring her back to this particular church, which is operated by a blood cult that is sworn to Dracula. And so that's kind of where Cult of Dracula begins, is Dracula coming to pass on her lineage. And once we flipped it from being just a traditional male story, patrilineal lineage, it really opened up a whole new world of storytelling, because we could look at different relationships, mothers and daughters, and the idea of, women taking agency and taking power in their destiny, because we don't really have a lot of stories like that. We don't have a lot of stories about women and their destinies. It's all, it's always about the men. So once we were able to run with that, it really turned the traditional vampire myth on its end, and it, I think, adds something new to the mythos.
Yeah, it's interesting. Vampires have never really gone out of style. There have always been something. There may have been, what's his name, did the gay vampire years ago. Now we have What We Do in the Shadows, which is hilarious. And and it's obviously very, very tongue in cheek.
Oh yeah, it's so well done.
But it's Taika Waititi, and he's hilarious. But when the Vampire State came out, what a great book! And again, a twist on the vampire story rather than just traditional. I think this is going to be very, very popular with a lot of people. You're going to find people that are like, I need something different, and I love these horror stories, so this would be a good one too. So, and having been and Dave and I have both read a good portion of what you've done so far, we both really liked it. So I can tell you now, I think it's gonna be pretty popular.
I sure hope so.
So how about setting? Where did you set this book?
Yeah. It was really important to me to kind of write what I know, and Stephen King, I think, said it best about horror. If you want to write things that scare other people, write things that scare you. And then, that to me also says write what you know, and write from your personal experience. And, I can't imagine really, I can imagine, but I can't effectively portray what it's like to live in London or, in Bulgaria or whatever.
Or Southern California.
Yeah, exactly. So,
really,
So
live there. Yeah.
I grew up in a very small town here in Tennessee called Sparta. Some of you may have heard of it. Some of you have probably driven through it on your way to Nashville if you're coming from Knoxville or wherever. It's a little tiny little town, and so it was important to me to write my own story in this book and my own history. So, while I obviously didn't grow up in a cult of vampires, or maybe I did.
Maybe he did.
But I did grow up in a small southern town.
Yeah, he won't tell us what his birthday is or how old he is. There might be...
Maybe because the answer would frighten us.
Yeah, see, that's maybe...
But, I grew up in this little small southern town here in Tennessee, and so I wanted that to be my setting for Cult of Dracula. So, it's... Southern culture has it's misunderstood a lot by outsiders, I think, and so it was important for me to tell that story in a way that that doesn't make fun of it, but also doesn't glorify. I want it to be a real look at the way I grew up. And one thing from living away from Tennessee for a while and then coming back, when I came back, I'd forgotten how important church is to this culture here. I mean, it is, where I lived in North Carolina, people went to church on Sundays and then they lived their lives. But here in East Tennessee, church is their life.
Yeah, your life is framed around church.
It is. Everything is influenced on that. And so in the book, obviously it's a horror book, so, we take a darker turn on it. But everyone in this book, their devotion to this church, it plays a very, very strong role in their lives. And we get to tell some side stories in the comic that really kind of delve into Appalachian culture, especially. A lot of the Scotch-Irish mythology is included. There's a beautiful scene, if you guys are fans of the song Copperhead Road. Music inspires me when I write. So I was listening to Copperhead Road at a Tennessee football game, and I think, Garin, you were actually with me that day, and I heard the song. They played it going into the fourth quarter, and all of a sudden I was in the middle of this football game and surrounded by 112,000 people in Neyland Stadium. I stopped and I whipped out my phone and I started writing a scene for Cult of Dracula right there.
I remember looking at you like, what the hell are you doing?
And I was like, no, wait, I can't lose this.
Don't talk to me.
And I'm furiously typing on my phone.
They're going to win this game. Shut up.
While I'm watching my favorite thing in the world, Tennessee football, and I'm writing this scene, and it turned out to be the opening scene to issue 3 of Cult of Dracula.
How many said that? How many issues are there in this?
Okay, so the first volume, there's going to be 5. Okay. Bradley, if you're listening, I think I might want to go 6. But we'll talk about it later.
Wow, let's just change everything up. Just stick another issue in there. Who cares?
But it's going to be, the full story is going to be 15 issues. 3 volumes of 5 issues apiece. And one...
6.
Possibly 6. So, 18. So, the good thing about Second Sight is they are very passionate about the story, and they're willing to... My contract says that I can essentially write as many or as few books as I want. I get to decide when the story is complete. So right now, it's planned for 15 issues, so 3 volumes of 5 each. It may expand, especially if sales dictate.
Sure.
But it's very important to me not to drag the story out too long. I would rather it end 3 issues too early than go on 1 issue too long.
Yeah.
Because there's only so much. A story will tell you when it's done.
Yeah, and I think a lot of comic book companies have done that. They've had things go on too long. I think you look at Kirkman, and you're like, okay, he ended. Wow. He ended into Walking Dead when he wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
Right. When he was done. He was done.
I admire
and he did
the
a great
hell
job
out of that.
Yeah.
He left so much money on the table when he did that because Walking Dead, while it wasn't as popular as it was at its peak, it was still a huge seller. It was still our number 1 selling indie book and the industry's number 1 selling indie book consistently. And Image wanted more, fans wanted more, everyone wanted more, but Kirkman felt that his story was over.
He's like, I'm done. This is it for me.
And for a creator to have the courage to say that, I admire the hell out of that because it's, he's talking. Contracts for Robert Kirkman. You're talking millions of dollars.
I mean,
sure. My contract is nowhere near that. And I would have trouble leaving this small amount of money on the table, and to see Kirkman turn away because it was right for the art, that's an artist.
Yeah.
That is a true artist, and I respect the hell out of it.
He definitely has his artistic integrity in check. Mm-hmm. All right, so that leads me to a couple of questions. So who does the art for the book?
Interiors, pencils, and inks are Henry Martinez. I am so happy to be working with him. Georges Genti introduced us. He said, you know what, Henry's going to be perfect for you. And he was right. Henry, probably best known for working for Marvel in the late 90s, early 2000s. Ghost Rider, Spirits of Vengeance, Blaze, Blade, all
God,
those
are some beautiful books.
really,
Yeah.
really
So, and the
are.
good thing is no pockets. So
No pockets.
no pouches. So we're,
Easy. We're not gonna do that anymore. Stop it, Garin. Come on, stop it.
Rob, I have
like
nothing
I
to
said,
do
Ghost
with
Rider
that.
didn't need pouches. I'm just saying.
But so Henry did pencils and inks, and he has been so amazing to work with.
Oh, and we've been lucky enough to see the early drafts.
Yeah.
I mean, these images are great. The covers are amazing.
Beautiful book.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a great book. Yeah.
Yeah. We found a colorist named Trevor Richardson. He's a younger guy, but he's done some work for Fangoria magazine and some other things. And we probably interviewed at 20, 30 colorists at least before we found the right one. And, some industry guys whose names you see on comic books that come out every single week. And they were all great. They really were. But Trevor, he stood out because he brought some things to the table. One, as a young colorist, he has a lot of confidence in what he does, and he trusts himself. He doesn't over-render things very often. And it's very important for a young artist to trust his or her ability, and not rely too much on the software that's out there. You don't have to use every single button in Photoshop to create something beautiful. Sometimes less is more.
Yeah.
And Trevor got that. And Trevor, really and truly, the way Trevor really got this job was, we asked him to color some sample pages, and everybody to do this, first like 5 or 6 pages of the book. And Trevor gave us a red sky. Everybody else did blue or gray or smoky, something like
We have
that.
a vampire book.
Trevor
Red
gave us
Sky
a
is
red
perfect.
sky.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
It was gorgeous. And it made everything else in the image pop. And I sent the sample. Like when I saw them, I'm garbage for color. I'm seriously colorblind to certain shades of reds and greens, and patterns of reds and greens. So I'm not a good judge of color. So I liked what I saw, but I didn't know what I was looking at or why I liked it. But when I sent it to Henry has never responded to me faster to a text message than when I sent him Trevor's pages. He was just hire him. He said, hire him now. And then we started talking about it, and he said he's doing things with color palettes I've never seen before, that I never imagined, but now that I've seen them, I can't not imagine them anymore. And so we got Trevor on board, and started working with him. And we've been a very, very good creative team working together collaboratively, to bring the interiors together. And then we've been very, very lucky to attract some extremely talented cover artists for the book. A lot of people, when people read the script, they want to be a part of it, and that's very humbling to me. And I'm very, very lucky because I'm nobody. I mean, in this industry, I don't
For now.
exist. Yeah.
For now, you'll enjoy that. Enjoy that time.
And
because I have a feeling by the end of summer, by the time people see this book, you're gonna be somebody.
But
Well,
I
somebody
mean,
more than you are now.
I'm working with people that shouldn't even have any clue that I exist, and they want to be part of my project. I mean, we initially, George Genti, of course, was doing covers for us, good friend. And then we had Carla Cohen. Those of you who are big collectors probably recognize her from the recent The Boys, Dear Becky. She did the Starlight cover. That's so stunningly gorgeous.
Amazing.
Yeah, she did. She did some stuff for Sabrina. She did some stuff for Snow White. She's a beautiful cover artist. But she's out of Italy. We initially had her in agreement to do a series of all 5 covers for us. And unfortunately, COVID happened, and she lives in Florence, Italy, and Italy was hit very, very hard. Can't talk too much about it, but Carla's going through a very, very, very rough time right now. So she explained what was going on, and she asked if she could go down to 1 cover instead of 5, because she said, I still want to be a part of this book. I really love it. I want to do this. But there's a lot of things going on with her because of where she lives and how hard they've been hit by the disease. And so I said, that's fine, Carla. Let's get a great cover. You do it, and so I should have that by probably early August. It's probably going to end up being the cover of issue 5, nice. I think. Nice. So from there, we started talking to Sanford Green from Bitterroot and On the Stump, which I think you guys have talked about On the Stump.
Oh,
You're on
Sanford
the panel.
Man. He's
yeah,
amazing.
he did a gorgeous cover that I think we're going to use for issue 3 or 4. Still working that out a little bit. Henry Martinez wanted to do a cover, and so we've got that working. I got in contact with an artist named Gyula Nemeth. He did the book Criminal Macabre.
And
I
don't know that name.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Great book.
He's from Budapest. And so he and I got to talking. We were friends through another friend, and so I loved his art. So we were talking, and he submitted to me a cover that we're going to use for the main cover of issue 2. That is stunningly gorgeous.
Is this the 3?
The brides. Yeah.
So he shows me this picture. He's like, okay, this is unfinished. I'm looking at it going, how the hell is this unfinished? This is amazing because they're coming up out of the mist, and it's just like, it's beautiful. And he's like, yeah, he thinks it's unfinished. I'm like, go with that one. That's perfect.
And then now you've seen the finished version.
Oh, yeah, the finished version's
why.
even better. You're like, oh, my gosh, that's amazing.
And so Gyula is interesting. He said, because when we were talking about doing the cover, he messaged me, and he's like, okay, now I work a little differently than other people. And I'm like, okay. I don't know the guy. We're just meeting on Facebook. And he's like, I'm like, okay, here comes the diva trip. But no, he was very humble. And he was like, I don't do any line work. And I was like, how do you not do line work? And I had all these questions in my head, so I just typed back, okay, question mark. And he said what I do is I draw it in pencil, and then I paint, and then I go back and I draw more in pencil, and then I paint, and then I draw more in pencil, and I paint. And I was like, oh,
that's how it's not line work.
That's how it's not line work. I get it. There's no ink. And so he gives me, one, guys, if you ever want to produce a comic book, it's expensive as hell.
Yes, it is.
Like, seriously, one issue with professionals involved is going to cost you about $10,000. As an indie, just being real. But so Gyula, I kind of wish I would have gotten him early on, because I could have gotten him to do a whole series of 5 covers, because he does essentially pencils, inks, and color all for one flat rate. And his work is beautiful. And so the cover he did for issue 2 was so gorgeous that I asked him, I was like, hey, would you like to do another one? Because this was about the time that Carla told me that she wasn't going to be able to do all 5. And so he said, absolutely. And so we started talking about it. And so he's done one that's kind of a blending of The Lady of the Lake and Through the Looking Glass, but kind of flipped in a way you're not expecting. So I can't wait. I've seen the rough of it. I haven't seen anything beyond that, but I'll probably have it by Monday or Tuesday to check out. But so we've got Carla Cohen, Georges Genti, Henry Martinez, Gyula Nemeth, all doing covers for us. And probably the big coup. You guys probably want to follow Bleeding Cool in the next 7 to 10 days. Check them out if you don't already. Make sure you're logging in because they are going to announce some really big news and show a really, really awesome new cover. It's already out there that Chris Callahan, who is probably going to be 2020's version of Peach Momoko. What Peach Momoko was to the industry in 2019, Chris Callahan may be for 2020.
Peach came along right after Art Germ, and something like those two have just been dominating.
For a minute it was it was Art Germ, Peach Momoko, Ben Oliver, and Joshua Middleton. And then those guys, those are all amazingly talented artists. But Peach was kind of the it girl for a while. And now I really think, looking at Chris Callahan's art and the last couple covers that he's done, they all sell for well over $150 on eBay, which is insane. Wow. He's got one out for a book from Source Point Press right now called No Heroin. It was a 1 in 25 variant. It is gorgeous. And then he knows Bradley Golden, the publisher of Second Sight, and so Bradley was talking to him and sent him the scripts. And Chris came back and said, "I want to do a cover." And I was like, and Bradley's like, "Hey, he's like, do you mind if Chris Callahan does a cover?"
Do you mind? Wow.
I'm like, and I was like,
Oh,
well,
shucks.
you know,
let me think.
If
I
he
mean,
pays me enough.
I was like, yeah, and I'm like, I'm freaking the hell out over here, and I'm not showing Bradley this, because I kind of want to maintain a little.
Put the
bit
phone
of,
down, squeal a little bit, pick the phone back up.
is it kind of like somehow when I didn't explode when Joe Pruitt was like, "How about we get Cullen born on it?"
Yeah, that was I had a Garin reaction.
I'm like, certainly that'd be good.
Think we can put up with that?
Sure, well, we'll make it work.
So Chris turns this cover. I mean, it's I'm trying to think of how much I'm allowed to say about it right now.
Don't go too deep, man.
No.
Okay.
We want that to rot as much as we appreciate you taking time to talk with us and our tiny little
gorgeous.
podcast.
Well,
we don't want to
honestly,
hurt
too,
anything.
We talked about this too, and I think that would be really cool, and we want to come back to this again. It'd be really great is if we get Georges and Henry on an interview.
I think we make that happen. Yeah.
Because I've met Georges Gents. He's a very, very nice man, fantastic artist. Haven't met Henry, obviously, but again, you're talking about someone who is very famous for what he does.
Yeah.
So it'd be great to have another one too.
Yeah,
But
we can definitely make that happen. We can get the whole team involved.
I think one of the things I like so much about so yes, you're a comic book shop owner, but one of the cool things is yes, you've owned 2 stores now, one in Wilmington and one here in Knoxville, and you've known so many different people. How many people were involved in this book? I mean,
God.
I'm not talking about the professional people. I'm talking about just people that are like read the book or donated products. Say, have you done this or thought about that? And I mean, I know you've had a lot of people that have been really involved in this book, and I think that to me is the measure of who you are.
Yeah.
Is you've got that many friends who genuinely care about about your product. Been like, hey man, I don't mind reading that for you. Or hey, have you tried this? Or you don't have to go into names or anything like that. That's up to you. But you have so. That's one of the nice things about being who you are. Is this is not influence. It's genuinely people want something cool for you.
Yeah.
So I mean, and David and I, yes, you provide us the place we do, but we wanted to get an interview with you because, quite frankly, this is a big deal for us. It's a big deal for the shop. It's a big deal. So, to me, that's a major thing.
Yeah, everything creatively that you do, it really takes a village of people, a tribe, if you will. And I'm very, very lucky that I have, like you said, I have a lot of people who have been willing to help me. And they've helped me throughout the entire process of developing this whole thing. People who just simply who would read scripts and give me feedback on them, because I'm the kind of person, if I ask you a question, I genuinely want to know your legitimate answer, because I trust you and I trust that you're going to give me a perspective that I can't get, and I'm asking you about something that I genuinely can't work out. I'm trying to get through something. Starting locally here in Knoxville, our very good friend, Whitney Crow, who does Adventure Seed on your podcast network. Whitney was extremely helpful when I decided to flip the gender role of Dracula and started delving into all of this mythology. Whitney was very helpful, advising me on pagan culture and Wiccan culture, because this book isn't just a vampire book, it's also a cult book, it's an occult book, it's witches, it's demons, it's pagan culture. All of those things play a very, very prominent role in the story and making the story different and tying horror mythology together to kind of a common core. And Whitney was able to share her culture and background with me in a way that made it make sense. Because prior to speaking with her, my understanding was based entirely on fictional accounts and history books that I could find.
You watched The Craft.
Dude, I've watched the crap probably more times than a
What did she say?
guy should.
Go,
Doesn't
great,
matter.
great.
Fariza Balk. I understand.
I love
Yeah,
Fariza
that's
Balk,
Fariza
man.
Balk, man.
She was awesome.
I think we should just stop this and go watch the crap.
But Whitney was really cool and really open with sharing her culture, and I'm very grateful to her because she helped me to write this story in a way that respects and honors pagan culture, and that was important to me because
That's a hard thing to do.
It is
because you're talking about something that for a lot of people they're afraid.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Well,
afraid
and in this area,
right, especially
it is difficult to be in the counterculture, whether it's I'm going to be a motorcycle tough, or I'm going to be a skateboard punk, or I'm going to be, a Reaganaut, whatever. But to be a pagan or a Wiccan or anything like that in the South of the United States is difficult.
It's tough.
And it's amazing that you can capture that and translate that based on working with someone who experiences it.
Yeah, and a lot of times in pop culture, especially, pagan culture is, and Whitney helped me understand this too. A lot of the tropes that you see related to witches and things, they're tropes that kind of, in a way, kind of make fun of the culture. And it was very important to me that I didn't do that. And that's why I was very proud. Actually, the main cover of issue 2 is dedicated to Whitney because it's all about the brides, and the brides represent very strong, very powerful pagan women from different cultures. Because what we did with the brides was we decided that these are a collection of women who are part of the bloodline, but they're not direct heirs. And that the Draculas have gathered them from different cultures and different eras throughout human history. And so rather than just making them all, skinny Victorian white women, like is traditionally done with Dracula, our first bride is a proud Nubian queen. And, the way she's drawn, I mean, she's super dark African skin with the brands that would be very popular in that culture, and the big proud almost Afro style hair and the jewelry and the things the way that she's drawn. And then the second bride, she is a Viking skald. And so you get to see her with her braids and her tattoos, the runic tattoos and the jewelry and things. And then the third is based off of and I'll probably butcher the pronunciation of this word, so to anyone Japanese listening, I apologize, but the Japanese nigiri, which is kind of a witch demon woman. She's the third bride, so you get to see her. When Gyula drew her for the cover, he was so into it, he's like, the nigiri, when they're presented in kabuki theater, they generally have this big, huge mask with these horns on it. And he's like, can I draw the horns? And I was like, yes, actually, because we've already got precedent for that on the interior art, because our mother Dracula, her hair is kind of Maleficent style. Yeah. And it actually, when she goes into her monstrous vampire form, it becomes horns. And I was like, so it works perfectly. And he got all excited about drawing these horns. It was a really cool way to represent pagan culture and witchy women throughout history in a respectful way, but also a real way. One cool thing I think about the book is that none of the characters are purely good. None of the characters are purely evil. They're all somewhere in between. Everybody's lying. Everybody's got a secret. Everybody's got a motive. And everybody makes choices. Every single character has agency over what happens to them in this story. And every single one of them deals with the consequences based on the choices that they make. And so I think that was really cool. We really just kind of throw the idea of traditional white hats and black hats out the window, and we just don't deal with it. So it's a challenging way to tell a story, because you lose the good versus evil story arc that's easy to fall back on, but it makes it fun.
So we've heard about the comic. Let's talk something else.
Yeah.
So David and I always ask kind of crazy, fun questions.
Okay.
So it's boxers or briefs. No, I'm not asking because I don't want
You
to know.
always bring that
Because
up.
I don't want to know. It's information I don't need. So what's the first big one you like to do?
All right. Well, so I asked Cullen Bunn, and it was the first time I asked, and I really fell in love with the question. If you could do the next thing, and you got your dream project, who would you work with? Who would be your artist? Who would be what would be the big thing for you?
Because you got your wish now.
Now, okay, so does it have to be? Can this be anybody, or does it have to be a living artist?
Let's keep him living.
Yeah, that's a living. 'Cause you
Sorry,
can't have
man.
Jack Kirby, sorry.
Can we resurrect Bernie Wrightson?
Oh.
That's funny. That's exactly what was said before.
But that's funny though. I mean, there are modern artists that do a very Bernie Wrightson-esque story.
Yeah.
Very very Bernie-esque art. So.
I would love to work with Rob Liefeld. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, you know what? I would be honored to work with Rob. I just did that because you guys have your thing.
Yeah. Thank you for perpetuating the beef.
Sorry.
If I could choose any artist to do my interiors, I would.
Well, there's the whole point is what book would you want? What would you want to do? Well, you could take like a major character you want to do. Like, would you want to write Spider-Man?
No.
Really?
My artist, I would love to work with Sana Takeda or Stepien Sayek.
Oh wow!
Either of those, man, just the thought of having them do interiors to something that I wrote would be incredible because I love both of their styles.
Wait, not Mark Gandolfo? Come on now.
I love Mirka Andolfo. I really do. I mean, Mercy is amazing.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Unnatural, Unsacred, gorgeous books. I absolutely love it.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Her art, I don't think would suit my writing style very well.
Yeah.
Or my writing. Let me rephrase that. My writing style wouldn't suit her art because she's way more important than I am.
But she's very specific in how she likes to do things, and that's she writes what she wants, and she does her art for what she wants too. So
To be fair, I understood Cult of Dracula pretty quickly, and I still don't know what the hell's going on.
oh yeah, well, Mercy 2 didn't help, but that's okay. That's a different point.
But yeah, man, she's got beautiful art. But Sana Takeda, I adore that art. And Stepien Sayek. If you guys haven't checked out Sunstone, God, it's gorgeous.
Yeah,
Or
you put me
Harleen,
on
for
that
that matter.
Harleen, oh my
Lord!
Harleen.
I mean, just one of the most amazing books. He did the writing and the art, and holy crap, it was great. I mean, not each single issue was a graphic novel in itself.
Yeah.
So wordy.
Mike,
Star Wars or Star Trek?
Oh yeah, another good one. Yeah.
Firefly.
Okay, flip the script. That's nice. I appreciate that. Anything else? Any other?
Oh, we've got a bunch of these. Now, you're a comic book store owner, so I understand that you have to color your answer.
Oh Lord.
Are you a Marvel or a DC guy?
Image. Or
Okay.
yes.
Or yes?
Yes.
Okay, so
I mean, we're obviously
We are obviously are too. I mean, it's there, but there's some people who legitimately are like and we have customers like this who are like, I don't like Marvel characters. I never have. I only read DC or vice versa.
Yeah.
And which always surprises me. Like, really? You don't like Spider-Man or you don't like Batman?
as a comic book store owner, I have absolutely no allegiance to any publisher whatsoever.
Amen.
My job as a comic shop owner is not to inject my opinion on things, but
to sell stuff.
It's to sell things that my
Yeah.
customers want to buy.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud that we have a very diverse and eclectic customer base at Nirvana Comics who support indie books, but also do support Marvel, DC, capes and tights type stuff.
Yeah.
My personal tastes. I don't read a lot of superhero stuff anymore. Not for fun, anyway. I mean, I read it because I have to for the store. But superheroes, they're not my thing. I tend to gravitate more toward the genre books, the horror, the sci-fi, the fantasy, the more unique and complex stories. Because I still love and respect superhero books, but really they're about the same 13 or 14 storylines recycled and with new costumes. You can really figure.
Accurate.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so many ways you can tell the superhero story without it becoming a genre story. If you want to stick to the truth of the superhero genre, you're limited in the way you can tell the story unless you expand it to horror or science fiction.
Well, Kirkman did such a fantastic job with Invincible because it's capes and tights, but it's so much more than capes and tights.
That's a family story. It's about families and friends.
Not just that though, but it's about space exploration, and I mean it's you've got a sci-fi
Trekkie,
part.
of course it's about space exploration.
So yeah, you've got that's one of the things that made
Invincible's Log.
Yeah,
Stardate.
Or like what Warren Ellis and Declan Shalvey did with Moon Knight. They turned it more into a psychological horror.
Yeah.
So pure capes and tights is not my thing, for pleasure. But the genre stuff, obviously, I love horror. I love anything horror. My favorite thing in the world is to be scared. I love it more than anything. And this is kind of probably odd to say, but I am constantly searching for that childhood level of fear that I had when I hid behind my mother's couch in my living room and peeked around the corner to watch Scooby-Doo. I used to be so scared, but I loved it. And I used to beg Mom, because Mom would threaten, I'm going to turn that off and you're not going to watch it. And I used to beg her, please, Mom, don't, I love it. But, it scared me and I loved it. I want that level of fear again. And as an adult, I'm kind of desensitized to it.
It's harder and harder to get that.
It is.
Yeah.
And
but there's a certain amount of enjoyment to it.
Yeah,
to jump just a little bit, that's that thrill. I look at my 2-year-old Roland, and it's like he loves being scared, and it's like you scare him and he giggles. He doesn't run away. He's like,
I love it. I want that.
Yeah.
Because when I'm genuinely scared, I get exhilarated and I laugh afterward. It's cathartic.
Yeah.
And that's why I love the horror genre so much, because when you can do it well, I think the last book that genuinely scared me was Infidel. And that
was a very creepy...
It really was a creepy book.
I was reading and I made the mistake of reading it at about 2 a.m. I couldn't sleep. I was alone in my basement. I was sitting in the dark chair, had one little light on, and everybody else in the house was asleep. And I'm reading this book, and I got the willies. I got chills, and I kept finding myself staring at the corners and convincing myself that I was seeing things there. And
one of the dogs comes downstairs.
One of them barked, actually, and I nearly jumped out of my skin because Gypsy, our golden retriever, Great Pyrenees mix, she doesn't bark often, but when she does, she's got a big bark. And when the whole house is quiet, and then it's woof. Whew. It'll make you jump.
Outcast did that for me. Outcast was such a, and again, nod to Kirkman. It's like it was the colors were so disturbing, and you could just get so drawn into it. All right, so what first drew you to comic books? What was that first memory, that first thing you picked up that?
I got into comics because when I was a kid, the only thing I wanted to do was play sports and play video games. I was a baseball player, and I liked to play video games. And I hated to read. I hated it. It was boring. I didn't like it. Just didn't want to do it. So my parents, brilliant people, they decided to bribe me, and they said that every time I did well playing baseball, they would buy me. Sometimes they buy me baseball cards, which I like to collect, and then sometimes they would buy me comic books. And they found out that I really enjoyed reading comic books. Amazing Spider-Man, Uncanny X-Men, Captain America. When I was a kid, I loved it, and the Hulk. And they got me reading, and so they said okay, and they kept buying me comics, and they kept buying me comics, and kept buying me comics. Anytime I did well, if I did my chores, if I did well at school, whatever, they were rewarding me with comics, and I would read them voraciously. And so over time, I was like, wow, reading's not so bad. And I started to expand that out, and I started to read, kids fiction and things like that, Goosebumps, whatever. Are You Afraid of the Dark? God, I love those books. There's images from that book that still haunt me. God, it was so good. So they tricked me into loving to read with comic books, and so after that, I just loved to read.
The medium grabbed you.
Yeah, and so those are my strongest memories. Being a kid, reading Uncanny X-Men, reading Amazing Spider-Man, Captain America, stuff like that. I loved Superman. I was really not a big Batman guy until I got older.
Learn
Then
to appreciate who Batman is.
yeah, and then I really discovered indie comics through Vertigo. And I'm so glad I did. I remember this dude, Leslie Varley. He was in one of my classes in high school, and he was new kid, moved in, and like small southern town, nobody likes outsiders, all weird. And of course, Leslie, this tall, skinny dude, long hair, always wore a trench coat, goth emo kid, whatever. And he sat behind me in one of my math classes, and he always carried comics in his satchel bag, and he had one day I saw he had Sandman, and he had The Crow, and he had Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, which were awesome.
Those were awesome.
Yeah, and Leslie and I got to talking, and he was a wonderful dude, good friend throughout high school, and I hope he's doing well. I haven't seen him in years. Maybe he'll see this. But we started talking, and he started telling me about The Crow. He was super into The Crow at the time, and so he let me read it, and I loved it. And then he gave me Sandman, and I hated Preludes and Nocturnes. I don't know why they wanted to tie the Justice League into that. It makes no sense. But then he gave me Doll's House afterwards, and loved it. And then I got to Death, and of course, teenage boy, manic pixie dream girl.
Yep.
That Death was my Scott Pilgrim.
Yep.
And I read it and I loved it. And so I discovered that Vertigo, there was more to comics than just Marvel and DC. And so I started reading all these Vertigo books. And I got to go to Bob's Collector's Den over in Cookeville, Tennessee, right on the edge of Tennessee Tech's campus. And my mom would let me go there. I got to go there on the weekends. And I would just buy, as much Vertigo as he would carry. He ordered stuff specifically for me because, I guess nobody else was reading it. Everybody else just wanted the superheroes were they still are.
King.
They still are. But, I was really got into that genre stuff. And then, from there, I fell out of comics for a while, because life gets in the way, it does to everybody.
As people do.
In college. And, when I got out of college, I started reading more. And this was when Image really was starting to get into they're making their turn toward genre books. And of course, Vertigo, I think, might have been a little bit before they had American Vampire out, which I adore.
Scott Snyder.
Walking Dead, oh God, yeah, and Raphael Albuquerque's art, stunning. And then Walking Dead, of course. My biggest regret as a comic book reader was I was in Wilmington at the time, and Thomas from Fanboy Comics tried every way in the world to get me to pick up The Walking Dead. He said, "Hey, it's this new book. It's about zombies." He said, "It's real. I've got the first 3 issues. They're still cover price, and you need to get on it." And I was like, "Dude, I don't like zombies."
But you're friends with Tony Todd. You gotta like zombies if you're friends with Tony Todd.
Well, I wasn't friends with him then.
Fair, okay. See, if you had been, that friendship would have driven you to the zombie book.
All right, so we're definitely gonna have to break this podcast up into 2 sections for everybody.
Have we talked too long?
No.
But we're gonna cut the interview now. I want you to stay for a minute though, because we're gonna talk something else after this.
Actually, I've got one more thing.
Okay.
2 questions. Number 1, where are going to people find you online?
Okay.
And 2, where are people going to find Cult of Dracula online?
Yeah, Cult of Dracula right now is live for retailers to pre-order on cornerbox.com. That's corner-box.com.
We'll put it on the Facebook page too.
Please do. So retailers out there, if you can call your local fans, if you can call your local comic book shop and ask them to order it through Cornerbox, we would greatly appreciate it. Through Cornerbox, it is going to be in Diamond. We've started that process, and it's probably going to be distributed, we're hoping, by some of the other distributors as well, but working out contracts. But Cornerbox right now is the best place for retailers to get it, so please support your local comic book shop first and try to get it from them. Through Cornerbox, we're able to offer retailers some very, very aggressive pricing. We're able to offer retailers a base 50, so you start with a 50% discount, which is insane for an indie book. Most Diamond, you're probably going to get 35, but we can give you 50, and then if you commit to ordering the same number of copies of issues 2, 3, 4, and 5 as you do number 1, we're going to be able to give you an extra 10% discount. So our goal with Cult of Dracula was to support local comic book shops by making the book more profitable for them to carry, because comic book shops are the life's blood of the comic book industry. It's their word of mouth. It's people. It's their communities talking about a book that really makes a book a success.
But something like this too. It's doing the podcast and that kind of thing. This is
part of the community.
That's a direction that we're about to go, is reaching out to comic book shops, not in our local area, but in surrounding communities, and starting to connect to them and say, hey, this is what we do. Come talk to us, and you can talk about what you do in your shop and that kind of thing.
You can also, if you're if you can't get a local comic shop, because some people don't live near one, you're going to be able, as of, I think, we're recording this on Sunday, right? So as of 5 p.m. on Sunday, it'll be live for pre-order on both nirvanacomics.com and cultofdracula.com. So if you don't have a local shop near you that you can go to our website, nirvanacomics.com or cultofdracula.com, and you can order it directly from us. You're going to be able to order some other things directly from us, like
you're going to be able to get signed copies. There you go.
We'll do that. We're also going to do some original art prints that are going to be numbered. I think we're going to do, talking to the different artists, I think we're going to do 150 of each cover that'll be available in an original 11 by 17 art print that you can get. We're going to have an official T-shirt, things like that. We have an official theme song, by the way, which I think you guys
I saw on the page.
That's pretty cool.
So you guys are going to see some
theme song.
media.
What?
Second Sight is not playing around with marketing.
They're
man.
not.
They've got a plan. Peter Brow, he's out of Canada. He's been doing a bang-up job getting this publicity. And
now, have you already got the marketing rights for the movie? I'm just saying.
I can't speak about that right now. I can answer that for him. He can't speak about that right now.
That's
IMDb. You guys probably saw IMDb leaked something last week that had to be taken down really fast because they kind of jumped the gun. What he said.
He can't speak with her. Don't do that to him. He's our friend.
I can't talk. It's like Cullen Bunn and Phil Hester. Why don't you guys in a book together? So that's a pretty tree.
Joe Pruitt turned to color when you asked
that. What I can say is that that small press comics are fertile ground for film and television companies to mine for properties.
Just coming out on Sci-Fi. Yeah, that's a new big one. So.
And we've had some advanced discussions about things. So
that's really cool.
Yeah,
that's also good to hear.
Way to put him on the spot. So.
Hey, but that's my job.
Richard, thank you so much for saying that.
Thanks for having
me. We really appreciate it. We're going to do this again. And guys, keep listening. We're going to keep bringing you awesome previews of great things.
Thanks, guys.
All right. See you out there in YouTube land.
You're going to break this up into 2 episodes.
I am not.